Yeah, let's look at the Poulenc grade 8 piece first. Absolutely adore this piece. It's beautiful. Challenges. When I first started looking at this, I just kind of felt it was very difficult to do anything with it other than just start very gently. Playing like that. And in fact, most people that I then went and listened to, because once I had an idea kind of how I wanted to have it, I then went off and looked on YouTube, Spotify, saw what people were doing with it. And generally most people are just, very gentle. And what most people don't do is they don't put in the different dynamics. So at the beginning it's MF, and then suddenly bar 7, 8, 9, in bar 9 it goes piano, bar 11 mezzo forte, and it sort of has these constantly changing dynamics. And at first I just found it a bit odd. It's like, why is this then louder? It didn't make sense to me in the beginning. It's like, why not just start with this beautiful tone, So why start louder? And then here we get louder, and then it suddenly goes piano. So this was a little bit of a mystery to me for a little while, and then I think things started to get much clearer when I was wondering about the section from bar 68, which basically says without slowing down. And it's like, why is it without slowing down? And then it occurred to me, these are bells. Now, because I've been learning quite a lot of Rachmaninoff, particularly the second piano sonata, which is filled with bells everywhere, I've sort of started becoming a bit obsessed with bells, thinking that these are bells. But I am absolutely certain, okay, not bells, they're not bells, it's the chiming of a clock. I think that it's almost like one of these grandfather clocks. It's a bit of a weird grandfather clock, and there's some kind of timing. What have we got? And it's marking the time in this sort of weird underwater sort of atmosphere. But they are very strange chords because, like how bells and chimes have loads of overtones. It's like the chiming of bells. Whoops. And then something has happened, and then it's the end. And at the beginning it tells you in the notes for the grade 8 book that this is a novelette, and so there is a certain narrative element apparently, although we're not told what the story is about. But these bells, this is part of the story. It's like time has run out, and so you have this beautiful atmosphere, and it says bathed in pedals, although apparently Poulenc was obsessed that people did not use the pedal enough. So it's kind of, I think, a theme in all of his music that he likes a lot of pedal. But I sort of hear something very watery. And especially in the bits that are quiet. I mean, there's definitely something watery there. It's underwater, or water's in there. Also, kind of moonlit. I think it's like moonlight and water. And let's take it from over the page. Whoops! It's been a little while since I recorded this one, so. yeah, moonlight, water, and it occurred to me that the parts that are MF is a man singing, and then the parts that are piano is a woman singing. And I think anyone who knows Ravel's Gaspard de la Nuit, and the first movement is about a water nymph who seduces a guy on the land. I think it's been a long time since I've played it. It's something along those lines. And so I am starting to think, okay, this is a duet. And, you know, we know this comes from a Spanish opera. And I think that there's something sort of quite heart on sleeve, Spanish and romantic about the man who's singing. He's feeling very romantic. He's full of longing for this beautiful water nymph that's very enticing, you know. And now here's the water nymph, and here's like my take on this. My take is that she's very French, and she's full of reserve. She's not very sort of outgoing and very yearning. She's just here being very secretive, like she has a veil. She's drawing him in. And then he goes, yes, and he gets pulled in. And now it's her turn. She's very, very aloof. And this aloofness really draws him in. What was it? Yeah. And then he's pulled in. Yes, yeah. And she's and he's and then they sort of duet together, possibly, or he's duetting. So you get the idea, anyway. You know, I think that she's very, very French. She is like, and then yeah, I don't know how many people watching this are going to be into Jungian archetypes and that kind of stuff, but I think that this water nymph, this creature of the water and of the night and of the moonlight, I think is really like the embodiment of the archetype of the feminine, and I think that in many ways, the way that I see this story unfolding is that she's not real. She's in his imagination. It's like there's moonlight, there's water, and he sees in the ripples, in the reflection, his projection of this most beautiful, most sort of delicate, mysterious feminine, you know. It's and Jungian psychology basically says that we are driven by archetypes, and so the archetypes is that, you know, the men carry within them a sort of a vision, if you like, an idea of the most perfect, most beautiful sort of feminine, and then women vice versa. And you know, this is not all men, not all women. You know, we live in sort of modern times where I guess you need to be a little bit careful about how you say this, because this is very heteronormative. Is that the word? So yeah. I mean, basically, they are all ideas from Jungian psychology and psychoanalysis. They don't always translate over to the modern world that we live in, which does have sort of a lot of more recent changes in gender studies. So I don't want to upset anybody with this stuff. I'm looking at this sort of very much through the Jungian lens with this kind of thing. Anyway, so. Yeah, so figment of his imagination. So this is the man. He's very archetypically Spanish, very heart on sleeve, passionate, full of passion. And then in the ripples, in the moonlight, there's his projection of this mysterious, beautiful woman. And then he's like, oh my God, yes, oh, he wants her. And he gets totally carried away. Whoops. And then here she is, his projection. What was it? Anyway, blah 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 blah. Now, then you kind of get towards the end. He's absolutely besotted with his projection in the water. His projection of the ideal feminine figure. And here she is. And then she's about to disappear. She's just disappearing. And like a bubble that's you've taken a pin and you've just burst the bubble. Like that's what happens in that little moment. Ding. And then the clock chimes. Maybe like, you know, Cinderella about to what is it that happens in the story when the clock turns midnight? It's like her carriage turns into the pumpkin or whatever, you know. So this is like, yeah, it's very fairy tale. Something happens and the fairy tale's over. She's disappeared, she's vanished. And then you have these very jazzy chords at the end, which is sort of like a very note. And that's the end of the story, guys. That's it. That's the end of this story. Hope you enjoyed it. You know, so yeah. Now, in terms of how to actually learn this thing, I really recommend being able to hear the tune. And singing it. Yeah, my students know that I really love to make them sing. They don't always enjoy singing, but singing, it's important to be able to sing it. When you're playing, somewhere in your mind, you want to be able to hear. And you don't have to be able to sing well, you know, that's not important. What is important is that you are as if you are singing it in your vocal cords, because if you don't, and you're just like hitting levers, it's just not the same. So anyway, make sure get rid of all of the middle bit. Just play the bass. And then. And make absolutely sure when you start learning this piece that you absolutely can hear this tune. Because then when you actually start learning it properly, everything else you want to almost be ignoring it, because I think that for a lot of people there's a temptation to play as if every note is important. All these other notes in the middle, it's like you almost want to just tune them out. And it's here a little bit, and then they can be a little bit more expressive. But the rest of it, you don't even really want to hear it. So I think that this is something that most of my students do not practice enough, and that is to practice, what is it that you're listening to? Can you play and only hear the melody? So, and then can you play and only listen to the middle bit? Oh God, that's quite hard. Now the thing is, it might sound like I'm deliberately making some things louder and some things quieter, but actually, when you choose to really focus on one part of it, like 90%, you find that everything else naturally becomes quieter. So when I started sort of really listening to the middle part, the tune naturally becomes quieter. When I listen to the tune, that naturally becomes louder and everything else naturally becomes quieter. There's, I suppose, a little bit of awareness that my fingers are making a little bit of difference, but if you are listening to the top line will be louder than everything else. If you're just listening to every single note, then it's just going to just be a mass of notes. And also you want to listen to the bass as well. So. And then when you ultimately perform it, you want mostly the melody, a little bit of bass, very, very little of the filler. In fact, the filler could almost be completely different notes, and it wouldn't even really matter all that much. When I was learning this quickly to stick up on YouTube, it was quite annoying because I sort of, because you've got the synthesia thing and all the notes are coming down, I did feel a sort of sense of responsibility that the notes really needed to be correct. But really when you perform it, the notes don't need to be correct. As long as you've got a rough E minor 7, you know, whether it's a D or a B or a G, it doesn't really matter all that much. What's important is the tune. You know, that could be a B, it could be a D, it doesn't actually really matter. Yeah, it matters there a little bit. The A doesn't sound quite right, but anyway. So yeah, really, really important when you are practicing. Make absolutely sure that you know what it is that you're listening to. And because the left hand jumps around, one of my biggest bugbears when I listen to a lot of people play Chopin is that a lot of the time Chopin, like waltzes and nocturnes, it's got a really simple right hand with the left hand that jumps. So what people do is they stare at their left hand, which means that the right hand it's not that loud, and the thing that comes out is the left hand. So you want to make sure that, and I've spoken about this on the podcast in the past, whatever you're playing, you only want to be looking at the note that you're playing as you're playing it. If you want that note to sing, if you want it to be loud. So for example, we can look. And there, that's really over the top. But every single time that I played this melody at the top, I looked at that note as I played it. What you don't want to do is to be looking at the left hand as those notes get played. Because then that's going to bring out your left hand. And I think a lot of people who are going to learn this piece, because here's the right hand just sits here. And apart from a couple of places where with tiny jumps, it's just all in one place. So we don't really need to look at it all that much. And then here's the left hand. And there's a lot of jumps. The left hand sort of involves a lot more awareness of jumps and where it is than the right hand. But here's the thing. If you want to play this well, you need to absolutely stop yourself from looking at the left hand at the moment at which it touches a note. So for example, let's take, if you use the fingering that's suggested, and I'll talk about this in a minute. So if you play it with the fingering that's suggested, you have a jump from this thumb to this note. So what a lot of people are going to want to do is to do this and to look at that G when it lands. You cannot do this. Please don't do this. And it's going to take a lot of willpower for a lot of people to not do this, because your eyes will just draw you in. It's almost like your eyes, in fact it is, your eyes, in my opinion, have just as strong a muscle memory as your fingers do when you learn a piece. So if you're used to doing this, to stop your eyes doing that is very hard. So what you want to do is you look, just before, if you're about to jump, you look to where you're jumping to, then you don't look at the moment that actually plays. Because in the moment that this finger plays the G in the left hand, you're listening to this note. And in my opinion, you cannot really be listening to that note if you're staring at that note. You need to be focused on this note, either visually looking at that note, or even better, just like with your eyes closed. Because you actually can play quite a lot of this opening with your eyes closed. You need to glance here and then have your eyes closed. And then open, close. You can do all that with your eyes closed. Or if you're reading from the sheet music, you keep your eye on the sheet music. So you look down and then sheet music. Or if you must, right hand. You look at the note that has the melody. This is going to come up over and over again in my tutorials. This is so important that you do not want to be looking, unless you absolutely have to, for insanely complicated technical reasons. You really do not want to be looking anywhere that is not the tune at the moment that note gets played. Anyway, so hopefully I've been quite sort of persuasive about that, because that's going to be a very tough habit to break for a lot of people. Now the other thing to watch out for, there's a few moments in this piece. Another common pitfall for pianists at this level is that every time the hand plays a note and then has to move somewhere else, what tends to happen is that note gets jabbed. And I've seen a few people do this with this piece on the internet at this kind of level, grade 8 and below level. So and I almost did not use this fingering, because the thumb, it's very tempting, if the thumb on the second note in the left hand, it's very tempting to jab it on your way to the next note, but it needs to be strong note, very soft. And if anything, this is the thumb is very very quiet, and then a bit of a lean onto the G. So, and it's very very hard against most people's habit patterns to play strong on the little finger and then very very soft on the thumb on the way to move your hands somewhere else. And I bet you that most of you watching this, who are coming up to grade 8 level, and in fact most of my diploma level students, when I started teaching them, started doing that kind of jabbing. It's a habit that almost every single non-professional pianist has. When I watch videos of me from 4 or 5 years ago, I'm doing this as well, and I still do this occasionally from time to time. And I do actually, when I'm listening to some pianists play it creeps in. It does creep in, so you've got to be really careful with this. So very, very soft, and just watch what happens every single time that you're about to move to somewhere else. Just catch yourself, because most people don't even hear it, because when they play this, you play this note, you're aiming for this G, and people don't even hear this. So someone might go, but because they were aiming for the G, they don't even hear that lump of the you know, that note there. So basically, I did almost just use my little finger twice, but this all the way through the piece, it sort of becomes very clear that this is how Poulenc intended it. That you have a thumb, and then the hand moves and puts you in a different position. But for a long time, I was questioning this. So here, you should here just be able to then bring the thumb in and rotate. So you should just be able to do this with your eyes closed. And nice and gentle, just nice and gentle. So we absolutely do not want which is what many of you would do or would have done without watching this, and have done when I go on YouTube to see what people have done with it. Very tough to read this from the score and perform it. I think a certain amount of memorization would need to take place, and what I recommend for this is to develop the ability to, this will save you so much pain, honestly. Look at the first bar, look at it, make sure you know it, don't play it. So you look at it, then close your eyes or keep your eyes open if you need to, but just don't look at it, and then play it, play that bar. And, oh, I didn't get it right. Oh, no, that's okay, just the first bar, right. There we go. And what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to close your eyes and start to be able to visualize it with an almost photographic memory. And you can develop this, and at first you might not be able to see anything in your imagination, but the more you do this, you'll gradually be able to just close your eyes and see that bar. And just get a feeling for, oh yeah, that's there. And you can do it with your eyes open. With your eyes open, you can just play and follow until you get to the point where you can just close your eyes or just not look at the page, and you can see all the detail on there. And then you look at the next bar and you close your eyes once you're pretty sure what it's doing, and you play it. And you basically work your way through the piece, and then here's the really clever bit. And this is like really what good professionals do. What you do is you start off and you look at the first bar, you get the first bar in your short-term memory, and as you start playing the first bar, it's there, you know what it looks like. You start looking at the second bar as you're playing this. Now I know what the second bar is, I've memorized it, and I'm looking at the third bar. Now I'm looking at the fourth bar. Now I'm looking, so basically I'm always looking one bar ahead, and I've practiced this in a step before by basically just playing one bar at a time, but memorizing the bar ahead, and then bar ahead, and then it's basically the next step is to just play this bar while then looking at the next bar, and then memorizing that, and then looking at the next bar ahead. Now this is really how you should be sight reading as well. This is the key to sight reading. There's a great app on the Apple platform called, is it Read Ahead? And what it does is that it makes you sight read, but the bar, as soon as the bar starts, it disappears. So if you have not looked ahead one bar and memorized it, you have no idea what's happening in that bar. It's brilliant, because that is how you need to be doing it. Now, when you're performing, a natural consequence of performance nerves and performance anxiety is that the attention tends to suddenly become very narrow, and you lose your ability to sort of have a broader view of things. So you know, see what happens if you perform, and you know, you're going to be doing this in an exam, hopefully, so you will be putting yourself in a position where you're going to get nervous. Video yourself, have people watching you, and see what happens. That when you perform, and if you're reading, what'll happen is that before, when you were aware of the whole bar, you suddenly find yourself looking at individual notes, and then you start panicking because you have no idea what's coming next, because this is a natural thing that our nervous systems do. It sort of creates a narrowing of what we're aware of. So actually practicing doing this, where you are practicing making your focus broader, that you're actually looking a bar ahead, is going to really, really help you, especially if you're going to perform while reading from the music. It's so important. And also, you know, these harmonies are not typical classical harmonies, and this is something else that I wanted to go into. I am running out of time. I wanted to keep this sort of within 40 minutes. I thought this was only going to be a 10-minute thing, but this is obviously grown. So this is very, very jazzy, and it doesn't necessarily sound all that jazzy, but all the chords are jazz. We start off with an E minor 7, which is not that common to start with the minor 7s. Normally it would just be something like but here we have the minor 7s. Very, very jazzy chords. And by the way, like I do recommend, if you are able to, go through it and work out what the harmonies are. I almost made a lead sheet, which is basically just the tune and just the chords. And in fact, I might still do that and make it available for people, because I think it's a really important way to understand what's going on in this piece. But basically, I'm going to try not to go into too much depth here, because really this is up to your teacher to help you with. Or if you already play jazz, go through it and start looking for how it is structured in a very jazzy way. In particular, there's quite a lot of use of a chord which is called the altered dominant. And I love altered dominants. I use them all the time in my jazz arranging. So an altered dominant, I'm going to try and keep this really, really, really brief, because I could go on this huge tangent. Basically, I'm going to go through this very quickly. You might not keep up with this, and if you don't keep up with this, don't panic. Just go look this up. Come to me for lessons. Go Google it. Look on YouTube for other people who talk about altered dominants. But let's say that we've got a G dominant 7th, and again, if you don't know what a G dominant 7th is, and a lot of my grade 8+ students actually were very rusty on knowing what things like dominant 7ths were. It's really important to know this kind of stuff for any kind of music that you're playing. But anyway, G dominant 7th is just G, B, D, F. You've got a major triad and a minor 7th, and the dominant 7th triad wants to resolve down a 5th to the tonic. So G dominant 7th resolves, G dominant 7th resolves to C. So G dominant 7th, it's got the 1, and if we think about the 1 being G, it's got a 1, a 3, a 5, and a flat 7, the minor 7. So that is a dominant 7th. Now, basically, we can add extensions. So we can add a 9th. Again, go learn some jazz, come to me for lessons, find a jazz teacher, whatever, but you can start to add extensions onto this. So in a G dominant 7th, you can have a 9th. And this chord comes up a lot in this piece. The 11th doesn't come up so much. I'm going to ignore it for now. You can also have the 13th, which is this chord, and this should sound totally familiar to anybody who's learned this Poulenc piece. So this is the G13. You've got the dominant 7th, you've got the 9th, and you've got the 13th. So this chord is all over the place in this Poulenc. Now, yeah, and you can have the 11th, but it's not such a common one. So it's there. It's not really all that common. Anyway, so an altered dominant is where everything that is not the 1, the 3, and the flat 7 has been altered in some way. So let's play the notes from the scale that would fit underneath a G dominant 7th. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G dominant 7th. So the shell of a G dominant 7th is just the 1, the 3, and the flat 7. Now an altered dominant is basically then taking the 1, the 3, and the flat 7, and every single other note you can't use. You can only use a note that's chromatically, that's like a semitone away from it. So for example, you cannot use an A, you can use an A flat, or you can use an A sharp. Now you cannot use the F, but you cannot use the C, but you can use the C sharp. You cannot use a D, but you can use the D flat, which is the same as the C sharp. You can use a D sharp. You cannot use the E, but you can use the F, which is already in there, or the E flat. So it gives you this scale. And this is called an altered scale, or it's called the Superlocrian. Again, I know that I'm really shooting ahead. I'm not expecting everyone to keep up with me. It took me years and years and years, despite really trying to figure this stuff out before I sort of started becoming comfortable with this stuff. And so basically an altered dominant is one where you have the 5th is altered. So you have either a flat 5th or you have a sharp 5th. And then you have, and then let's spell it this way, you have either a flat 9 or you have a sharp 9. So this is really complicated to people who've not come across this, and I'm just hoping to whet your appetite, because let's take bar 15 in this piece. So and let me go from bar 13 where we've come from. And here we have a very simple chord. It's an E major over a B root, and then this chord here. This is an altered dominant because we have our 1, we have our flat 7. So the 1 is B, the flat 7 is A, the D sharp is a 3. And then you have C, the C is a flat 9, still relatively common. You do have this chord quite a lot in classical music, but then you have the G, and the G is important here because this is the sharp 5, and you tend not to get this chord in classical music ever, pretty much ever. So most classical musicians hear this and have no idea what it is. There's something slightly sort of unfamiliar about it. And so when people are reading from the music and get to something like this, there's just something a little bit unfamiliar about it. And so it helps to actually understand the harmony of what's going on. And to also be able to read ahead, so that this unfamiliar, exotic sound doesn't throw you. And these altered dominants are just everywhere through all of this. There's also like a dominant 7 sharp 11. But anyway, so yeah, I've gone into a bit more depth than I meant to there. One more thing. You really should memorize this. Yeah, you really should memorize the whole section from bars 35 to 40, because that is quite difficult to read and watch what your right hand is doing. It's quite a tricky little section, that. So yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say on it for the moment. I could say loads more. You know, if what I've said has whetted your appetite, I do teach. I do teach and online. So if you're interested, you know, I'm here to give you more lessons and stuff. But yeah, anyway, I hope that this was useful, and I'm pretty sure that I've covered some of the things, the pitfalls that people are most likely to fall into there. So anyway, yeah, I hope that was interesting.